Con amigos quizás no mucho converso, ¿no? Quizás con la familia, muy antes que estaba aquí, conversaba muy poco con la familia también, ¿no? Porque es diferente conversar con los hermanos, con el papá, no es como con una esposa, con hijos. Últimamente sí, me comunico más porque tengo una novia que necesita más atención y tengo que a menudo siempre llamar, ¿no? Generalmente llamo por teléfono, ¿no? Y por teléfono aquí del rancho, ¿no? Y no tengo yo celular, ¿por qué? Porque mi pareja también no quiere, ¿no? No quiere porque es un gasto también, ¿no? Quizás ¿no? No por eso lo que tratamos de ahorrar, cosa que invertir en Perú, ¿no? Y nosotros tenemos confianza entre los dos, no hay problema.
Instantaneous and constant communication on a cell phone may be integral to urban life, but it isn't in the country, and lack of cell phones does not equate to abuse or neglect.
When it comes to communication, again, there's just so much naive misunderstanding of life in the country. The Old West was something we used to watch movies about and admire the John Waynes of the past. And suddenly, they're victims. We never thought of John Wayne as a victim, but these are men. They're not little boys that came up and need a mother to take care of them. They are men of the Old West, and they have come to do the Old West's job. That does not mean abuse. That does mean a solitary life. That was standard for any cowboy in the old days, as well as it is for these cowboys these days, these sheep herders. I went out one time, as I have done various times, with one of the foremen of a local ranch. We were gone for 48 hours. My wife didn't realize that she wasn't going to be getting a call from my cell phone because I had no cell service, just like a sheep herder. And she was nervous and wondered what was happening when I got back. But that is normal life in this country, not to have cell service. Because I have a truck and I can drive out and get to a site is one thing. But these men understand that that's the way it is. One of my good friends, I talked to him last year, and he works here locally. He said, I just told my wife I would call her in September, and that was June. He was fine with it, and she understood.
Bueno, para mí en particularmente no estoy acostumbrado mucho en la ciudad porque yo siempre he sido ganadero y soy origen de las borregas del vacuno. Estoy feliz trabajando en el campo.
In order to get a cell phone, the rancher must set up the account for the herder, which ultimately means the rancher is financially responsible for the bill if the herder doesn't pay it. Calling overseas, herders can easily run up a monthly cell phone bill in an amount that exceeds their monthly wage. Ranchers have been stuck paying cell phone bills for hundreds and even thousands of dollars when herders didn't track the number of minutes they used. Special interest groups counter that ranchers can get prepaid phones for herders. However, prepaid phones don't usually have very good coverage in rural areas, and many remote areas don't have coverage for any type of cell phone. Colorado ranchers typically check on their herders at least twice a week, and most herders are not completely isolated. Many herders do in fact have cell phones or radios, and they also have access to a phone when they are at the ranch headquarters or when their boss is in camp to bring supplies.
In the summertime, I talk to him every morning with a CB radio. And if I don't talk to him that morning, if I don't talk to him the next morning, I'm in camp. So in the wintertime, it's a little different. They're on the desert, but they have a cell phone down there I can use. You know, we got cell phone service down there, so I don't talk to him maybe for 2 days, maybe 3 days. But if he has a problem, he can always call me. So that's the difference. If I didn't have cell phone service down there, I would probably figure out some way to get a walkie-talkie or some kind of a thing I could communicate. I really like to communicate every day if I can.
Herders, they can have a cell phone with us. We don't pay for the cell phone, or we don't pay for their service. And you know, I guess, you know, there can be problems that arise. There's a lot of areas that there isn't any cell service, but for our experience, it hasn't been negative. I mean, they're able to call home. I think it helps them make the transition from coming here to work from, you know, where they left with their families and that. So I think it helps.
Every man of mine has a cell phone. I think I have maybe 1 or 2 men that do not have their personal cell phones, and that's because they're using ranch cell phones. I have a policy on the ranch that they will pay for their own cell phones. The reason being is that sometimes these guys get carried away, and while you explain the program to them, they may overuse the minutes on their programs, and sometimes they can get a bill going that's very, very high. I've had men that have used the whole month's salary for their cell phone for 1 month. That's all it takes usually is one time for them to understand how to manage their cell phones. But our policy is that they carry their own cell phones and they pay for their own cell phones, other than the ones that are available on the ranch.
Y todos los días platicando con el patrón cómo está las borregas y cómo está uno, y si necesita uno algo, comida, víveres. Diario a las 5 de la mañana hablamos.
Herding sheep can be in an isolated or remote area, but this is not always the case. Throughout the course of the year, there are many situations that bring herders in contact with other people. To make the accusation that perpetuates the myth that herders are totally isolated, work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never get any time off, and never see anyone is to deliberately ignore the real working conditions of the herders.
Sí, tengo acceso al teléfono.
Con mi familia me comunico fácilmente mediante nuestro teléfono, celular, ¿no? Atención medical, cuando para eso está el celular, entonces tengo que llamar inmediatamente a mi patrón. Estoy mal, ¿no? Pero hasta ahorita estoy bien.
Country folks accept and embrace isolation as a way of life, and herders typically come from isolated villages in their own country. So working in a remote area is not unusual for them. City folks, on the other hand, are often frightened by the thought of working in a remote area or working alone. Special interest groups capitalize on this and manipulate the situation by drawing straight-line comparisons of abuse and neglect with isolated working conditions.
La que me gusta más, estar con las borregas y estar ahí andando ahí viendo los paisajes. Lo que más me gusta eso, no sé a los demás, no sé qué es lo que les gusta, pero a mí me gusta eso.
No me afecta la soledad porque nosotros estamos casi acostumbrados en las punas, ¿no? Somos hombres andinos, hay que decir más claro, ¿no?
Hoy en el día que está modernizando acá en todo el mundo, ¿no? Teléfono y a veces cartas, y a veces toco, hablo en cassette y lo giro para allá para que puedan escuchar mi familia.
Sí, ahorita por si yo tengo un celular, ¿no? Entonces comunico con mi esposa, con mis hijos, entonces uno se siente contento, tranquilo. Entonces cualquier problema que hay también cuando uno se va a la montaña, por si algún problema con borregas o con uno mismo, entonces tiene esa facilidad de comunicar con el patrón también. Hay días sí triste un poco, pero mayormente lo paso bien porque ya conozco el ambiente, conozco la zona y tengo también el campo DVD player. Uno se siente, viene de Perú, por si te manda la familia los videos de algún cumpleaños o fiestas del pueblo, entonces uno se siente alegre.